I never imagined that my worst nightmare would come from someone I trusted the most. For years, I believed in my marriage, believed in the promises whispered late at night, and the laughter we shared over burnt pancakes, in the way her eyes lit up when she talked about our future. My name is David, and this is how it all came crashing down. We met in college. She was studying literature, always buried in books. I was in engineering, building things with my mind and my hands. She'd comment on passages from Dickens while I explained how microcontrollers worked. We were opposites, but opposites attract, at least that's what everyone always said. I thought it meant strength, balance, complement. It turned out I was wrong. We married shortly after graduation, moved into a modest house with a yard big enough for a dog, and worked hard to build a life together. She became a freelance editor. I settled into a stable job designing machinery. Our life was tidy, familiar, comfortable. Nightly dinners, weekend hikes with our rescue pup Max, plans to travel someday. Real life, I reminded myself, is not a romance novel, and that was okay. Then came the messages. I discovered them by accident. My wife, Emily, had been acting distant. Someone else's texts would buzz in just as I was walking into the kitchen. She'd step outside or down the hall, phone pressed tight to her chest. When marriage said trust, I looked the other way, until one night, I couldn't. I picked up her phone by mistake, a thumb resting on the screen as it buzzed. I froze. The name and the notifications, M. Just that letter. One letter. I stared at it, heart racing. My mind spun. M. She came back into the room. David, she said softly. What are you doing? I swallowed. You need to tell me who is. My voice came out rough. She shut the phone. Not now. Why weren't you telling me? She looked trapped. It's complicated. From there, everything spilled. It started with rationalizations, that they'd met at Writers Guild events, that conversations turned late night, that surprising emotional affinity became something more. That M meant someone she connected with, someone different. Someone who made her feel young again. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. The idea that the wife I trusted had been whispering nights and texts to someone else tore the floor from under me. I confronted her. She admitted it. There was an affair. Not just emotional, but physical. My blood threatened to boil. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. But words like that taste empty when trust is shattered. I asked, who is M? She hesitated. It's someone from the group. A friend. I pushed harder. Name. Now, I can't, please. Not yet. Breach. Betrayal. Every foundational belief in my life cracked in that moment. Over the next few days, our house turned cold. I couldn't sleep in our bed. I slept on the couch, consumed with questions I didn't want to ask. She made coffee in the morning, sat across the table. We pretended to keep going. I parroted reassurance. I would forgive. I would seek counseling. I would try, but inside, the longing for answers twisted me. Then came the proof. One night, she dropped her wallet. My hand flicked open a card reading simply, M. Richardson, my brother's name. Silenced breath. My heart froze. My brother. The man who played catch with me on Sunday mornings. The guy I grew up with. The one I thought I could trust. I stared at the card. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. In that moment, all the pain of being betrayed by my wife multiplied by 1,000. I backed up, hand shaking, phone still in hand because I hadn't deleted the message yet. Just held it. Held the proof. Held the agony. Held the moment before everything changed again. I stood there in the hallway for what felt like an hour, just holding that business card, staring at the name that had suddenly become a blade in my chest. My brother, Matthew Richardson. Of course it was him. I should have seen it sooner. They'd met before, briefly, years ago during a family barbecue. But I never imagined, never would have believed either of them capable of this. My hands shook as I put the card down on the counter. I heard Emily upstairs, walking from our bedroom to the bathroom. Her casual footsteps made the moment more unbearable. How could she be moving through our life so normally, when she'd burned the ground beneath us? I didn't confront her right then. I couldn't. The rage wasn't controllable yet, and I was afraid of what might come out of my mouth. So, I walked out the door. No coat. No destination. Just me and the cold night air. I wandered the streets in a daze. The world looked distorted, like it was happening behind glass. I tried calling Matt, but he didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. What was I even supposed to say? Hey bro, just wondering why you were sleeping with my wife around midnight. I ended up at my parents' old place. They were long gone, but the porch light still flickered like it used to. That light always stayed on until Matt and I got home when we were teenagers. That memory made something inside me break. I sat on the front steps and cried. Ugly, quiet, bitter tears that didn't ask for sympathy. The next morning, I returned home. I walked in, and Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, her phone next to her. She looked up, already knowing. You know, don't you? I didn't answer. I just stared at her. I never meant for it to happen with him, she said. It just happened. He understood me in ways you didn't. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or disappear. You slept with my brother, I said slowly, deliberately. That doesn't just happen. She looked like she wanted to defend herself, but couldn't find the words. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. And that silence spoke louder than anything else. Did he know? I asked. Did Matt know you were using a fake name in your phone? Did he know you were hiding him like an affair you were ashamed of? Her silence was the answer. The betrayal was mutual. She was hiding it from me, and from him too, at least partly. I didn't know if that made it worse or just more pathetic. They weren't star-crossed lovers. They were liars. Cowards. Selfish to the core. I left that day. Packed a bag, took Max, and walked out. I didn't look back. Matt finally called me later that night. I let it ring out the first time. The second time, I answered. David, he began, voice cautious. You don't get to speak first, I cut in. You slept with my wife. He didn't deny it. It was a mistake, I laughed bitterly. That's all you have to say to me. After everything. A mistake? I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. You didn't mean anything, I snapped. You're just like her. You think intentions mean more than actions. There was a long silence. He didn't argue. I'm done, I said. We're done. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear from you. You don't exist to me anymore. I hung up. And it was done. The months that followed were hard. The divorce was fast but not painless. There were no children, no complicated financial entanglements. But the emotional weight, that was something lawyers couldn't fix. Emily tried to reach out a few times. Messages, emails. All apologizing, all vague, all useless. I didn't respond. I moved into a small apartment near the city. Max adjusted faster than I did. I kept to myself. I read. I went to therapy. Slowly, I pieced myself together again. Not stronger. Not better. Just real. The silence after cutting off my brother was louder than I expected. It wasn't just about losing a sibling. It was the grief of losing the version of him I'd carried with me my entire life, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who stood beside me at my wedding, who gave a speech about lifelong loyalty while knowing he was sleeping with my wife. That kind of betrayal doesn't leave quickly. It sits inside your ribs like a bruise that never fully fades. I threw myself into work for a while. I stayed late, picked up extra projects, made excuses not to be home. Max was my only real company, and most nights, he was the only reason I remembered to eat or get off the couch. Sometimes I caught myself scrolling back through old photos, family gatherings, my wedding, a weekend trip to the coast with both Emily and Matt. Smiling faces. Lies hidden in plain sight. It took months before I could go a whole day without thinking about it. Not just the cheating, but the fact that both of them, The two people I loved most in this world knew what they were doing and did it anyway. I kept turning that over in my mind. Not the act, but the choice. The repeated choice. Therapy helped. Not right away, and not always in obvious ways. But it gave me a space to be angry without guilt. To grieve without being told to move on. One session, my therapist asked, "Do you want closure or revenge?" I said, "I want them to feel what I felt." She didn't judge me. She just said, "Then what?" That question haunted me. I realized I didn't want to carry them around forever. I didn't want their names to echo in every quiet room. I didn't want my identity to be the guy who got betrayed. I wanted to be someone else again. Someone whole. About a year after the divorce, I ran into someone at a bookstore. Her name was Rachel. She was looking for the same book I had in my hands. We talked. It was simple, normal, so unlike everything I'd been through. She smiled like she meant it. I found myself smiling back. We got coffee. Then lunch. Then more. I told her my story one night, when I felt like I owed her the truth. She didn't flinch. She didn't pity me. She just said, "That's brutal. But you're still here." And I was. Rachel taught me how to trust again, not because she tried to fix me, but because she never asked me to be anything other than honest. With her, I didn't need to perform strength. I could be vulnerable and still feel seen. Matt reached out again once. A year and a half after I cut him off. He sent an email. Said he was in therapy, trying to understand himself. Said he never expected forgiveness, but he hoped I was doing okay. I didn't reply. Not because I hated him, but because I had nothing left to give that man. Emily never reached out again. I heard she moved to another state. Maybe started over. I don't wish her well. But I don't wish her harm either. She's just a chapter I've closed. I don't believe everything happens for a reason. Some things are just awful. But I do believe we get to choose what we do with the wreckage. And I chose to rebuild. Not in spite of the pain, but because I refuse to let it define me. There are still days I wake up with a weight in my chest. But they're rare now. More often, I wake up grateful. Grateful for peace. For clean slates. For people like Rachel. And for the man I became when I had to walk through hell and come out clean on the other side. One afternoon, not long ago, I went back to the neighborhood where Emily and I used to live. I didn't stop or knock or linger, just drove through slowly with Max in the passenger seat, his nose pressed against the cracked window. The house had been repainted. There was a swing set in the yard, now someone else's family living inside the walls that once held mine. I didn't feel angry, or nostalgic, or anything dramatic. Just still. As if time had done what it was supposed to do. It hadn't erased anything, but it had smoothed out the sharpest edges. I pulled over near the park, where we used to walk Max. I let him out, and sat on a bench with a coffee in my hands, watching him sniff old trees like they held memories. I thought about everything I had lost and everything I hadn't. I hadn't lost my capacity for love. I hadn't lost my ability to trust. It had just gone underground for a while, buried under fear and shame. I hadn't lost my future. In fact, I had reclaimed it. Rachel joined me later that day, and we sat together in the quiet. I told her I had come here to see if it still hurt. She squeezed my hand and said nothing. That was the thing I had learned. Healing doesn't always need a big revelation or final confrontation. Sometimes it's just the silence between two people who understand you. I'll never forget what happened. I don't think full forgetting is possible when the betrayal came from your own blood, and the person you once imagined growing old with. But I've stopped replaying it like a loop. I've stopped asking why, like it might suddenly change the ending. Matt and Emily made choices. So did I. My choice was to survive. To rebuild. To let go. And maybe that's what strength really is, not pretending the past didn't cut you, but choosing not to let it control you. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who's still a little scarred, but standing. Someone who knows what they want. Who they are. what they'll never accept again, and what they're finally ready to welcome. Life goes on. Not in spite of the pain, but because we let it. And I'm finally ready for it. A few months after that visit to the old neighborhood, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first. It was neat, careful. Too careful. But once I read the first line, I knew. It was from Matt. David, I know I probably shouldn't write. I've tried not to interfere with your life, and I know I forfeited any right to speak to you the day I betrayed you. But I've thought about what I did every day since, and I needed to put something on paper not for your forgiveness, but because I needed you to know I've changed. Or at least, I'm trying to. I sat with that letter in my hands for a long time. I wasn't sure whether to read it all or rip it in half. Eventually, I kept reading. I've spent the last 2 years in therapy. I've stopped drinking. I've distanced myself from the people who encouraged the worst parts of me. And I've started asking the hard questions: why I did what I did. Why I didn't stop it. Why I let myself take the one thing that should have been sacred between us trusts. I know I can't undo it. I know even this letter might do more harm than good. But if it means anything, I am sorry. And I do love you. I always have. I don't know if we'll ever speak again, and I won't write to you a second time. But I wanted to say those words before I let go. He signed it simply, your brother. Matt. I folded it and put it in the drawer. I didn't respond. I didn't destroy it either. I realized I didn't hate him anymore. That shocked me. I still didn't trust him. Still didn't want him back in my life. But the white-hot rage that once lived in my chest had cooled. What was left wasn't forgiveness. Exactly, it was something quieter. Acceptance. A resignation that not all wounds heal with closure, and not every relationship can or should be mended. That was the thing no one tells you. Healing doesn't always look like a hug or a reunion. Sometimes healing is the ability to move on without needing answers. I moved in with Rachel last winter. We didn't make a big deal about it. One day she brought over a second toothbrush. The next we were reorganizing the kitchen and picking out curtains. Our lives folded into each other like pages of the same book. We talk about the future. Kids, maybe travel. A life that doesn't involve secret names or silent resentment. Sometimes at night, she'll look at me and say, "You're somewhere else." And I'll nod, because it's true. Some nights I drift. I replay moments, conversations I wish I'd handled differently. I think about the signs I ignored, the doubts I silenced. She never tries to fix it. She just holds my hand and lets me sit in it. It's a strange feeling to be with someone who doesn't make you prove your worth every day. I didn't know how much I needed that until I had it. I saw Emily once, by accident. It was in a bookstore, of all places. She was alone, her hair longer now, thinner too. We locked eyes briefly. She gave a small nod, and I returned it. No words, no drama. Just a glance between two people who had once shared everything, and now shared only the knowledge of how badly they'd broken it. It didn't shake me. It didn't bring up old longings or fury. It just reminded me how far I'd come. A long time ago, I thought I needed answers to heal. I thought I needed confessions, apologies, explanations. But the truth is, none of those things can rebuild what betrayal tears down. The only thing that can is time and the choices we make with it. I chose to rebuild. I chose love, not just love for another person, but for myself. For the version of me that crawled through the worst nights, cried into a dog's fur, and still got up for work the next day. That version of me deserved to be seen. And now, he is. Some days are still hard. Trust doesn't come easily. I sometimes ask myself, what if this happens again? And the truth is, it might. That's the risk of being human. But I also know that I survived it once. And I know what I deserve now. I deserve honesty. I deserve peace. And I won't settle for less. As for Matt and Emily, I hope they found whatever it was they were looking for. I hope they've changed truly, but their paths no longer intersect with mine. They are no longer the center of my story. They were a chapter. I've turned the page. A few weeks ago, I found myself talking to a friend from college I hadn't seen in years. We were catching up over coffee, the kind of casual conversation that normally doesn't go deep. But as people tend to do when they haven't seen you in a long time, he asked, "So, what's the biggest thing that's changed in your life?" I paused. There were 1,000 ways I could have answered that. The betrayal. The divorce. My brother. Moving. Rachel. But instead, I said, I stopped living like I owed people my silence. He raised an eyebrow. I smiled. I spent years not wanting to upset anyone. Not wanting to make waves. I didn't speak up when things felt wrong. I excused things I shouldn't have. And I let people cross lines because I didn't want to lose them. Then I did anyway. He nodded slowly. So now, I said, I speak. I ask the questions that might make things uncomfortable. I listen to my gut. I don't confuse being easygoing with being a doormat. And if someone leaves because of that, they were never really mine to begin with. That's the thing. Betrayal teaches you not just how to survive other people's lies, but how to stop lying to yourself. I no longer cling to people who make me question my value. I no longer stay quiet to keep the peace if it means sacrificing my own. Life now is quieter, simpler, and infinitely more honest. And sometimes, when Rachel and I are lying in bed on a lazy Sunday morning, Max snoring at our feet, I catch myself smiling for no reason. Not because everything is perfect, but because, after everything, I'm still here. Still hopeful. Still open to love, to connection, to everything I once thought was gone for good. That's the ending no one talks about, the quiet one. The kind that doesn't involve revenge or dramatic confrontations, just a man, his dog, a new love, and the knowledge that pain didn't get the final word. I did.